Okay, well, I will start the meeting. And then Ken, I can let people in once I say a couple of words here. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some old friends and new ones. I'm Ann Bryce with Yolo Audubon. And I want to welcome everybody to this meeting. And I know some of you are longtime eBird users and some of you are brand new. So it's going to be up to the expertise of our speakers to hit the right level here. I don't have much general Audubon news except to remind people that there is a field trip on, Zane, is it on the 19th?
Yeah, this Saturday, the 19th.
And what time? Give us the rest of the details.
We're going to be meeting at the Park and Ride in East Davis at 7 a.m. and it will be done by noon. I think Emmett has a link to the trip posting on the website that maybe he can put in the chat.
Perfect. Okay.
That has all the information about it there.
Okay. So we'll look forward to seeing you, a lot of you there on Saturday. It should be fun. And Ken, at the end of the meeting, will tell you about our April and May programs. And then it's the end of the Audubon year again. It's incredible. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken to introduce the speakers. Thanks.
Hello, good evening, folks. Tonight we have, excuse me, Emmett Iverson and Zane Pickus, who are going to give us a basic overview of eBird. We've had folks who have mentioned that they would like to do eBird, but that sometimes it seems daunting. And so our two members have stepped forward to help us all out. Emmett is a wildlife conservation major and will be moving to Arcadia, coming up to continue his studies at Humboldt State. He really loves birding and, excuse me. Let me get these and just do my speaker. Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Did we lose Ken or we lost his speaker?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Ken.
Earth again.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay. Thank you. So anyway, I get those earbuds off and it was very irritating. And so Emmett, we're talking about Emmett. Emmett is serving as the Yolo County Regional Reviewers Board. He's chair of the board of Ebird Reviewers. So he is one of the folks who will send you an email if you put down a condor or something like that. He's a member of the our Christmas bird count organization last May. Gosh, anyway, I'm not quite awake yet, so they're gonna need a lot of time here because they're gonna really go over this for us. I'm sorry, guys, but Zane has had a big interest in birds for his entire life. And as he's gotten older, he's just kind of morphed into it's a passion for him. He's currently a high school student. And he's on our board of directors for Yolo Audubon. And he is also a regional reviewer for Ebird. So let's give it to you guys so you can just take over and do a good show. And I'm sorry for botching all the introduction, but my eyes aren't working.
Thank you, Ken.
No worries. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully this goes smoothly. I'm gonna share the sound, and here we go. Can everyone see my screen right now? If I open this up.
Yes.
Yep. And can we see? It's full screen, right? It's not just like a little.
Yes, it is.
Sweet. That worked. Step one. Okay. Well, I'm Zane Pickus, and I'm here tonight with Emmett Iverson, and we're going to be presenting about Ebird, the basics, and we want to tell you guys about some of the features that Ebird has to offer, and its incredible database, and just about the program. So here we go. First off, what is Ebird? Ebird is, at this point, the world's largest citizen science project. It is home to millions of bird lists, photos, sound recordings, videos, maps, all that can be curated with different searches by region, species of bird. It's just an incredible database that also is useful to birders, researchers, conservationists. Everyday birders can use it to record their bird sightings in one place and access them from any device anywhere in the world. And with all the data that Ebird has from observations being submitted, researchers can use the data for science. So it's a really great collaborative project, and it is constantly growing. Ebird was founded in 2002 by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the National Audubon Society. And you can read this from its mission statement, but its original goals were to gather bird information in the form of bird checklists and then archive it where it can be later accessed by birders, researchers, and conservation groups. And at the same time, it is constantly working to come up with new data-driven approaches to science, conservation, and education, while also making birding rewarding for the everyday birder with lots of tools that we will talk about tonight. Ebird has grown in unfathomable amounts. Currently, I believe it was last year, Ebird passed 1 billion bird observations in its database, which is pretty incredible to think about. Each year, over 100 million observations are submitted. And currently, Ebird has hundreds of partner organizations. Obviously, the Cornell Lab backs Ebird as well as Audubon, but there are many, many, many other organizations that partner with Ebird. Currently, the number of eBirders exceeds 500,000, and that includes birders from almost every country. Of course, it is very focused on the United States, but as we'll see later, there are submissions and data submitted from all over the world. And Ebird has been growing consistently by over 20% each year. So this is a program that just continues to get bigger and bigger. And as a result, its data gets more and more accurate and can be used for broader scale. And yeah, Ebird is growing every day. So we're actually going to take a look in just a second at what they call the submission map. But first, I put a little screenshot to get oriented. This here, when I took this, shows all the checklists that had been submitted on this day. All these little dots all around the world, and all this in here in the United States and Europe, those are all individual checklists that had been submitted. And these yellow dots were representing checklists being submitted at that moment. So actually really quick here, I'm gonna exit from the presentation and we're gonna watch this live on the Ebird website. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up. And yep, here we go. Sometimes it takes a sec to get going, but you can see right away that 41,603 checklists have been submitted to Ebird today within the last 19 hours, which is pretty wild. And yeah, here they go. Sometimes it takes a moment. So one just got submitted from what appears to be like Texas. Depending on the time of day, this map will sometimes just be like pinging yellow left and right. Here comes one from the Western United States. So it can be fun to just turn this on and oh, see here comes some from Southeast Asia, Australia, Hawaii, Ohio, maybe. So this can be kind of mesmerizing at times. I definitely like to check this out. It's pretty cool to watch as the checklists come in and see just how truly global Ebird is. So we will head back to the presentation and put that back live. Come on. All right, and with that and some background, we want to get right into all the different tools that Ebird has to offer. So I'm going to hand it off to Emmett here with step one, which is creating an account. And Emmett, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Zane. I just want to say that this whole talk is going to be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if we're going too fast or if you're not being recorded anymore, we will be able to take a look back at this. And if you're confused at all, you can go back through and follow it step by step. We also kind of got a little bit scooped last night. LA Birders did an Ebird presentation, and it was really excellent. And it goes a little bit more in depth about rating media and a little bit more advanced features. But we are trying to focus and gear this talk towards helping people get up and running and start using Ebird a little bit more and playing around with these features. So I think this will still be really helpful to people that are, they want to get started. So first off, we're gonna talk about creating an account. To submit an Ebird checklist, you need to have an account. So we're going to do this by walking you through from the Ebird homepage. So if you were to search Ebird and click on ebird.org in your browser, whether it's Safari or Google, this is going to be the interface that's displayed. The only difference might be whatever beautiful photo of a bird Ebird's choosing to use on that day. But right off the bat, you're going to want to click in the upper right-hand corner on the green button that says Create Account. You're going to click that, and it's going to bring you to a page here. And you're going to put in your first and your last name. So I kind of chose to be a little bit funny here and put in Shiny Cowbird and choose a username like I Heart Cowbirds Forever. But this is basically just putting in some of your basic information. And then I also want to highlight on this screen, when you create an account with Ebird, you get access to all of these really cool projects and programs. So the Great Backyard Bird Count, the Macaulay Library, all of that is available to you. And I really encourage people to play around with some of these and see how involved they want to get. Really importantly, make sure to save your username and password. And your username cannot be changed after you create an account. So some of my friends have usernames they made when they were 10 or 12 years old, and they're pretty funny. And we make fun of them sometimes for it when we're sharing a checklist. But make sure you have these. It's really important when you're trying to make the mobile app, you're trying to sync those two things. But after this, once you've put in all of your information, you're going to want to click on this blue button that says Create Account. All right, perfect. And so now we're going to talk about, after you have an account, just signing into it. I know this seems rather, basic for some of you, but I think it's important that we go through all these steps.
All right, so once you have your account set up the first time, after that, if we're back at the Ebird homepage here, we're going to hit in the top right in the blue sign in, which is right next to create account, but you only need to create it the first time. So if you click on that sign in button, it'll take you to this page. And here you can sign into your Cornell Lab account, which for our purposes tonight is I Heart Cowbird Forever. And once you put that in, you click sign in, and then then you're all set. Then you're logged in, and everything that we're about to talk about, you have access to once you've signed into your account. So I'm going to go back to Emmett to start us off with an Ebird profile.
So we're going to talk about Ebird profile first, because I think for a lot of people, hesitation with using Ebird is privacy. And so we're going to right off the bat show people who don't want their information to be public how to make that private. So we're going to start, like always, off on the Ebird homepage. And in the upper right, you're going to select your name, and you're going to get a drop-down menu, and you're going to select Profile. And that is going to bring you to this page. And so I just used my own here, but you can see a lot of your statistics here, how many species observed you've seen, checklists submitted, species with photos and whatnot. And then it's interesting because you can actually get a little bit more in-depth by clicking on these counties, which we're not going to show. And you can view some more statistics on a county level. But you can also zoom out and you can see the entirety of the United States or the world and how many species you've seen there. But we're going to talk about editing your profile. And just want to reiterate that anything that's in blue lettering, you can click on. So for here, we're going to select Edit Profile, which is right there. And this is going to bring us to a page that looks like this. So I chose to have a photo of myself. This is me leading a field trip along Puda Creek a couple years ago. You can also add any information about yourself. Some people really go in depth, and that's great. I personally just want to give contact information in case anyone has a question or wants to get in contact with me. But if we scroll down a little bit on the same page, you're going to get to privacy here. And so I have selected the blue check marks on both to make my profile public so that you can go on Ebird and you can look me up and see all of the information on my profile. That's public. If you don't want to do that, you can not select that. You can leave that box blank, and people won't be able to click on your name. People won't be able to see anything about you. And then there's also the option of showing my latest checklist. And so for Ebird, you can view the 10 most recent checklists that a person submitted. And you can actually view a lot more than that because you can see the 10 most recent on like a county. So you could see the 10 most recent checklists I have from like Calaveras County or Yolo County or California. But you don't have to show this. And so I think for a lot of people that don't feel comfortable with this, that's a perfectly valid option. And I want to make sure that people know that you can opt out of that. So kind of in tandem with that, that isn't everything to do with privacy. That's just the profile aspect of it. And so Zane is going to walk us through Ebird preferences and a little bit more on privacy.
So yeah, you can obviously change some privacy settings with regard to your profile, as Emma just pointed out. But you also, if you go to that same drop-down menu on the homepage up here in the top right where your name is, this time we're actually going to click Preferences. And this will allow us to change some other settings that have to do with our account and what shows up in the Ebird output. So if we go ahead and click on the blue, which again, anything in blue is a link. So that's can be really fun to kind of explore with that. So we click on Preferences and it takes us to this page. And the first thing that comes up here is the species name display. And this is basically asking you, how do you want the name to show up in all of Ebird's features for a species? So do you want the common name or the English name, which is probably what you're most familiar with, certainly is for me, or maybe someone who English isn't their first language, or you can change the language if you need to, but maybe some people are more familiar with the scientific name and they want that to show up. Personally, Emmett and I both have it selected, so both the common name and the scientific name show up. And I think this is pretty cool because obviously I recognize the common names. That's what I'm familiar with. But it's also interesting to see the scientific name and kind of learn about those. And you only become familiar with them by seeing them in connection with what you know. So I personally like to have both of them show up. I think it's pretty interesting. Below that here, we can change your public name. And this is really important. This basically, I think is something maybe some people don't recognize as an option when it comes to making your Ebird account more private, if that's a concern you may have for joining. So you have two choices. Obviously, first, you can have your name show up. And your name will be attached to anything that you submit to Ebird, be it a checklist with birds, photos, recordings, or videos. and it'll be attached to any like sightings that someone searches up in some of the tools that we'll describe later. So your name will be attached to anything you submit, which is good because that gives you like credit for photos and whatnot. But some people don't want their name to be searchable online or in Ebird for whatever reason. And if that's the case, you can click on Anonymous Ebirder, which just means that instead of having your name attached to photos and sightings and any of that, it will say Anonymous Ebirder. And that's a perfectly valid choice. It's whatever you're more comfortable with. It has to do with your preference. Below that is more about data privacy. These can get a little complicated about what you're opting out from. So it's probably a good idea to read. They have some things on the website in here if you're considering it. But basically, you can opt out of different aspects of Ebird that people can search. We'll talk about alerts and recent visits later. And the other one that you can hide from the public is checklist comments. So when we talk later about an Ebird checklist, there's a section where you can write things like about the weather or maybe visibility or who you were with when you were birding. And those will all go in the checklist comment section, which again, we'll cover in more detail later. But you can opt to hide those if maybe you don't want people to read about, I don't know, say like who you were birding with if they don't want their name attached or something like that. Emmett, did you want to jump in on this? Maybe not.
When we were putting this together, I realized that I had my checklist comments hidden, and I was like, uh-oh. And so I actually opted out of this so that now people can see my checklist comments. So
I think generally it's a good thing to have checklist comments shown just because it can give more information with connection to your sightings. And then lastly, you got to save your changes. Otherwise it won't like save them. But once you do, it's connected to your account and you only have to do it once. And then getting right into the core of Ebird itself is what is Ebird checklist. That's how all bird sightings and observations, as well as photos and media, are submitted. Checklists form the foundation of Ebird itself, and none of the projects or data would be possible without the submissions of birders checklists. So Emmett's going to take us through the steps on how you submit a checklist from the Ebird website.
All right, perfect. So submitting a checklist, we're going to start off on the Ebird homepage and walk us through. On the top left, right next to that Ebird logo, there it's going to say submit in blue letters, and we're going to click on that. So the first thing you have to do is describe where you birded. The option above is choosing from your recent locations or from your locations. This is helpful if you use Ebird a lot and you have a bunch of previous locations. But for a new Ebird user, I would really recommend finding it on a map. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in a region. So for our intents and purposes, we're going to type in Yolo, and this little drop-down menu is going to pop up. We're going to select Yolo, California, and click on it. And it's going to show us a map like this. So just kind of giving you guys the how-to aspect. There's the addition and subtraction, the arrows. And you can use these to zoom in and out. But you also can move around by clicking down on your mouse and dragging or toggling. And so this is going to really be helpful in navigating a map. And that's going to apply to species map and every map that you're going to be dealing with on Ebird. And let's suppose that we were birding at the Yolo bypass. We've zoomed in, we've toggled a little bit over to the east from where we were. And we're going to click on one of these red pins. If you want to make a checklist for your yard or somewhere that's not a hotspot, somewhere that people don't often bird, you can zoom in, find your location on a map, and you can hold down and it's going to present a pin. And then it's going to give you an option. It's going to give you GPS coordinates. And you can change that and write, you know, Mary's yard list or whatever you want the name of that location to be. But let's just say that we're going to select the Yolo bypass wildlife area. And we're going to click on one of those red pins. and then we're gonna hit the green continue button right there. So that is going to pull up this page right here. And this is going to be about the date and effort. So I think we made this on March 10th. So we clicked on this blue thing in the middle, and we pulled it down and we put in March 10th. If you're submitting old checklists, obviously you can select any time of year, January through December, any date or any year that hasn't happened. And then observation type. This is where you're going to specify how you were birding. So traveling means that you traveled more than, I believe, 100 feet in any distance. So like it says here, if you're walking on a trail, driving around, this is going to be the option for you. If you are in your backyard and just watching the birds from there, you're not really moving. If you're sea watching, you're watching loons stream by you on Point Pinos. Stationary is going to be correct. And then the last, well, historical is another option. This is when you were birding, it was your primary purpose, but you may not have specifics. So if you were to put in a checklist from, let's say, 1995, you took a trip to Africa, and you have field notes, but you don't have information regarding how long you were birding, the distance, or what time you started and ended, you'd want to put it in as historical. And then our last option here is incidental. And this is perfect for, let's say you're not birding, but you are detecting birds and you want to put them in. So you might be gardening or hiking, but you're with people who aren't birding. Maybe you're on your bicycle. Incidental is going to be the best choice. So moving on, once you've made that decision, you're going to put in what time you started. And then on the far right, after hour and minute, you want to select AM or PM. And that's pretty useful. And then below that, you're going to put in how long you were birding, whether you're birding for 30 minutes or 2 hours and 25 minutes. That's where you're going to enter that. And then below that is distance. And distance is one way. So that means that if you were to go to Puda Creek and you were to walk a mile down the trail and a mile back, it's not 2 miles, it's 1 mile, because you really only birded a 1 mile stretch of area. But let's say you're driving around the Yolo bypass and you do a loop and you're not birding the same place twice, then that would be, you're going to use the whole distance for that one. And then for party size, pretty self-explanatory, but if I'm birding by myself, it's going to be a party size of 1, or if I'm birding with Zane, it's going to be 2, or on the Yolo Audubon field trip next Saturday, it might be 25. And then below this is where the checklist comments go. I've been putting checklist comments in for years. Apparently no one could see them. And then once all that's entered, you're going to hit the green continue button right down there where Zane's pointing. And so that's going to bring up this. And this is really the interface where you're going to put what birds and how many of them you saw. And what you're seeing here is a filter. And a filter is the expected or semi-expected birds in an area during a certain time of year. This filter is going to look different today on March 16th than it would on July 15th. And that's because birds move. Trumpeter swans in July are not going to be in the Central Valley. They're going to be breeding in the high Arctic. So a bird that is very common during parts of the year may be rare other times of year. So the filter is going to change to reflect that. But here, I wanted to point out that you're going to put the number you observed. And once you do that, it's going to give you the option where it says hide details. It's going to usually say add details before you've added any. And so here I just put lifer for Gary, and then a brief description of the bird and where you saw it. And then, yeah, that's important. And then you can also jump to species here. And this just means that you can kind of search, and then it's going to bring a drag down menu that you can select from. So mourning dove, you click on that, it's going to bring you, click on that mourning dove. It's going to bring you down the filter to mourning dove. You're going to type in the number that you saw, and then you can add details if you want. You also don't have to. I really recommend adding details for uncommon birds or birds that are rare. So if you do have something that's rare or flagged and you can't find it on the filter, the way that you're going to want to do it here is you're going to want to select or tick this box that says show rarities. And that's going to show you every bird that's ever occurred in Yolo County. And you can enter it here. The ones that are flagged as rare do require a description for them to be submitted. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment, about what some of those descriptions look like. But for an example here, we did a stilt sandpiper. And this is just a brief description. And then the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the details and the bullet points of what we want. Whoa, that's a really beautiful broad-billed hummingbird. This was the bird that was here, was it last winter? It was really amazing. But what to include in a rare bird description? So is it a continuing bird or did you find it? Continuing is probably one of the most used words on Ebird checklists. And a continuing bird basically just means that it's previously been reported. And it's really crucial that you put this on a checklist that you are chasing a bird, because it lets the reviewer know that you recognize that it's a rarity and that it's been around. And then the next things we're going to talk about are important, and you should include them with the continuing bird, but really, really critical if you find a bird. So some of those things include like the viewing conditions. So if you have that stilt sandpiper, maybe 20 feet away in perfect light, you should write that, because it's going to give whoever is reading it an idea of your experience with the bird. But you should be honest too. If you see a bird a quarter mile away and poor lighting flying, you should also definitely state that. You also want to include weather, optics. So optics being, did you have binoculars? Were you at the store and in the parking lot when the black swift flew over with no binoculars? Or did you have your binoculars and you got wonderful looks at it? And then moving on to more of the phenotypes, size, you really want to try and get a comparison of it next to the other birds around. Behavior, so is it foraging? Is it in a tree? Is it on a ground? Is it on a mud flat? The flight style, is it flying like a woodpecker? Is it kind of flying tern-like and buoyant? Just try and observe the bird and include some of these things about what it's doing. And then also very important is talking about the plumage and structure of it. So what does the pattern look like? What are the colors on this bird? Is it an active molt? Is it really crisp and fresh? And then structure, you want to talk about the bill shape. Was it really broad and wide? Was it narrow and thin? Was it long? Was it decurved or upcurved? And then tail length, head proportion, was it really bulky or was it kind of delicate and dove-like? So these are all important and not a comprehensive list of what you should include, but definitely something you want to be looking out for. And then importantly too, you want to talk about how you eliminated other species. So if I'm reading a description of a stilt sandpiper and they talk about why they don't believe what they saw was a dowitcher, that goes a really far way in lending credibility to a report. But it's just really important, don't ever write it at a feeder. You should include that it was at a feeder. That is really important, but that should not be the only thing that you're writing. So here we are back on the filter. We've filled out some of the birds that we saw at the bypass, and we're going to be doing all of this together on Saturday. So you put this in, and then next you're going to want to answer whether or not you're submitting a complete checklist of the birds you were able to identify. And this means that if you're a beginning birder and you can't identify every bird, as long as you identified the ones that you could, a complete checklist. If I were to go outside of my house and I saw a ferruginous hawk fly over and I thought, oh man, that's new for my yard list, I'm going to put in a one species checklist with a ferruginous hawk on it, but I'm not submitting any of the mockingbirds or the dark-eyed juncos that I can hear, then that would be an incomplete checklist. So once you've made that decision, you are going to click the submit button right below that. Oh, Zane's highlighting it now. You're going to click that green button, and it's going to bring us to a page like this. And from here, you can add media if you have photos. I will include a link from Ebird on their how-to for adding media. We're not going to walk through it here because it's really dependent on what kind of software or computer you're using, whether you're using a Mac or a Dell or a PC, whatever. But I'll include that in the chat in just a moment. So next we're going to be talking about one of my favorite features on Ebird, and this is really a way to look up species and where they are, and you're going to be able to see it as pins on a map. And Zane's going to take care of this.
So yeah, so the species maps are a really cool feature, which I'll walk us through now. But basically, it allows you to search like a range map like you might see in a field guide or on like a birding app, or you can zoom in to any location in the world and see whether or not that species has been seen there and exactly where that species was reported. So it's a super powerful tool, and it's easier to appreciate when you can actually see it. So again, we're going to start on the Ebird homepage for consistency, and we're going to hit the Explore tab. The Explore tab is your friend. All these things, all these blue words at the top you can click on, but the Explore tab has all the tools that we're going to talk about tonight, with the exception of submitting a checklist. And it is very, very useful and is worth checking out. So once we click on the blue Explore, it takes us to the Explore page. And we're going to start off by clicking on Species Maps, which is right here. And again, we can click on the blue Species Maps, and it's going to take us to this page. So this is the homepage for Species Maps. And right now it's just an empty map of the world. But as we can see, we can type in any species name, any species in the world. We can type in here and search it, and it'll come up with the curated map of Ebird observations of that species. So Emmett and I decided that we would do Lawrence's goldfinch, which is a personal favorite of both of us. And if we click on Lawrence's goldfinch here, then Ebird will pull up the observations. And as we know, Lawrence's goldfinches are a species of the southwestern United States and northwestern Mexico. So Ebird automatically centers the map to include just the observations. It's no longer a worldwide map for the species. That being said, if it was like a house sparrow or something that truly is a worldwide species, the map would not be zoomed in. But here we can see something probably looks kind of familiar, might look like something you might see in your Sibley guide or Peterson or whatever. So this is a map of Lawrence's goldfinches in the US. And using these same zoom buttons that we learned about in the submitting a checklist, we can zoom in. And here we can look at Lawrence's goldfinches in California. And so here it's a little more specific. We can see the darker areas have higher concentrations over here, the frequency of what percentage of checklists Lawrence's goldfinches are reported on in that section. So you can see that down in Southern California and kind of the Southern Sierra Nevada and down into the desert, there's significantly more higher percentage of checklists that have Lawrence's goldfinches. They're a lot more common there. By contrast, Stockton has some, but not very many. And going up into northeastern California, and especially east of the Sierra Nevada and Nevada, there's hardly any reports. And we can zoom in further. What if we looked at Davis? So here is Lawrence's goldfinches in Davis, California. And it is important to note the difference between the blue and red pins. So red pins represent recent reports within the last 30 days, and they are exact locations where that report came from. On the flip side, blue pins are anything older than 30 days. So it's important to keep in mind that a blue pin could be as recent as 2 months ago, but it also could be a historical record from potentially 10 years ago. But we're going to check out a recent report from North Davis right here, this red pin. And if we click on that, we can see that on March 9th, 2022, there was 2 Lawrence's goldfinches reported by Josh Greenfield and an anonymous eBirder. This is a good representation of where your name shows up in eBird and whether or not you want it to be public. But once again, the date is blue, which means we can click on it. And if we click on this date right here, March 9th, it will take us to the eBird checklist that had the Lawrence's goldfinches reported on it. So we're going to check that out. We click on that, and it takes us to the checklist. And if we scroll down, sure enough, there was 2 Lawrence's goldfinches, a male and a female. And Josh Greenfield got wonderful photos of these birds, 3 of the male right here and a female on the right. And so just like that, we can look at from one page, we can see a range map throughout the country, the state, Davis, all the way down to an individual observation of 2 Lawrence's goldfinches at the exact location that they were seen. And that can be done for any species that we can search. So obviously, this is a very, very powerful tool. It can be used to get an idea for a species range as a whole, similar to what you might see in a field guide, or perhaps there's a species that you really want to see, but you aren't really sure where to go to see it. Maybe you really want to see a Lawrence's goldfinch and you're like, where could I go? Well, they were seen a week ago in North Davis at the North Davis Uplands Habitat in the fiddleneck. And spoiler alert, they should still be there because they were eating fiddleneck flowers. So really powerful tool and absolutely worth exploring more. Speaking of exploring, I'm going to let Emmett take you through exploring regions.
Yeah, exploring regions is a really cool feature. And this is going to be a way to look at an area, whether it's California, the United States, Yolo County, or any of the other 57 counties that we have in California. It's just such a cool tool and gives you a more comprehensive overview of what species and are there, have been there, and the activity of birders there as well. So we're going to start off, as always, on the Ebird homepage, and we're going to go to Explore, where we've gone so many times before. We're going to select blue lettering, perfect. It's going to bring us to the Explore home, where you're going to have a bunch of different cool features, and we're going to walk you through most of these throughout the presentation. So if you type in Yolo into the Explore Regions search bar right here, and you can look at all the ones below that. You could view Colombia, the Solomon Islands, and so forth. But we're going to do Yolo, and we're going to click on that, and it's going to bring us to the Yolo County homepage. And so right off the bat, we can see the last scene here, which is really cool. It shows you, this screenshot on March 10th. That day, there have been eBird records of crows, and house finch, and spotted towhees. But also, if we look to the right, we can see first seen. This means that these are the birds that are being seen for the first time in Yolo County on eBird, at least. So back in October, a Magnolia Warbler was the first one submitted to eBird. And then before that was a broad-billed hummingbird. And this is a really cool way to explore a region's most recent rarities and kind of go through and see what has occurred in these places. And then next to that is high counts. I really love high counts. When you are using eBird and you are entering how many you've seen, there's another, even if something's not rare, like something like a meadowlark, which is very common, if you report 5,000, it's going to flag as an unusual high count. So usually you're going to want to put a description of how you counted them, whether it was by ones or by fives or hundreds, or did you take a photo and then kind of make an estimate from that? But regardless, high counts are really cool, and you can use this to search through the most recent high count scenes. So an example down here is Evelyn Chang reported 230 common mergansers, and that's the most ever seen in one checklist in Yolo County. or Jason Liu had 33 chipping sparrows, which is just an exceptional number for Yolo. I really enjoy this. I think it's a lot of fun to see what the most individuals of species that have ever occurred at one time are. And then next, we're going to move on. So we've already, just to the left of the highlighted red are the species observed, which is what you're seeing down here below. But we can click on the complete checklist. And if we do that, it's going to bring us to the 100 most recent visits or checklists that have been submitted. So at the time of this screenshot, the most recent one was like a 745 Cameron Tesher UC Davis Arboretum checklist. So if we click on that, and the way you're going to want to select a checklist is by clicking on the date and time. If you were to click the UC Davis Arboretum or Cameron Tesher, it would either bring you to Cameron Tesher's profile, or it would bring you to the UC Davis Arboretum hotspot. And we're going to cover the hotspot in a little bit. But I want to point out that down below, you see Jim Thomas in black letters. This means you can't click on it. And this is because he has his privacy, his profile turned to private. So that means no one can look at his profile. So that's just a good example. But let's go back to this and let's click on the March 10th, 2022 checklist. Oh, so here's Cam. He's got a barn owl, which is a new arboretum bird for him. Cameron really loves patch birding, and he does a lot with the UC Davis Birdwatching Club, and he is a big supporter of Yolo Audubon. But going back, we can hit the back arrow. It's going to bring us to the same page, and we're going to select eBirders here. And this is going to show us, first of all, there's 4,706 people or eBirders that have ever submitted a checklist in Yolo County. And it's going to show who has seen the most species in Yolo County and who has seen the most checklists in Yolo County. And it's just incredible that Steve Hampton has 2,094 eBird checklists in Yolo. It's really a testament to how much he birded and how much he contributed to eBird for Yolo County. And then next is hotspots. I really love clicking on this because when you click on this, remember it's blue, you can click on it. It's going to show you a list, and it's arranged by the most species seen at a single hotspot. And so the bypass has the most species. This is a really, really, really useful tool when you're traveling somewhere else and you want to know what the best places to bird are. You would go to explore regions, and then you'd click on the hotspot button like we've done, and it's going to show you all the good places that you might want to check out. So next, this is still going to be a part of exploring regions, but it's an illustrated checklist. And this is a really, really wonderful way to search through media, whether it be sound, photos, videos that have been taken in a certain place. And I'll let Zane take care of this one.
All right, so if we go back to where we just were on the Yolo Explore page, in the top left here, we can see the illustrated checklist is highlighted in blue, and we can click on it and open up the Yolo County illustrated checklist. And right away, you can see there's a ton of information and a lot of stuff to click on and explore. So let's break it down a little bit. If we were to look at snow goose right here, the second one down, right away, we can see the species name, and that's in blue. So later we're going to go look at species profiles, and that's what this will take you to, but we're going to talk about that in another section. Below that right here is a bar chart. That's what we call these year-long graphics that show how likely you are to encounter a species in a given location at any time of year. So we can see that in the winter, snow geese are most common, right? That makes sense. They winter in the Central Valley, and then they kind of thin out, and they're basically pretty much gone in the summer. I think this is probably a little bit inflated here in the middle by maybe injured birds that just decided to stay the summer at a pond or something. They really shouldn't be here in the summer, but going back, they come back in the winter. So we can check out the bar chart, and we'll talk more about how you can interpret these and adjust these later. You can see that snow goose was last reported, at least at the time that this was created, on March 9th. Absolutely is more recent than that now. and we can click on the checklist if we wanted to. We can see the top photo for snow goose in Yolo County, this beautiful shot right here. And we can see the top recording. But let's say we wanted to explore a different species and we didn't want to have to find it in the list of 370 that is on this checklist. We can type in any species. So let's say we wanted to talk about Western sandpipers. So we type that in right here in the search bar and jump to species and click on Western sandpiper. And it takes us to the Western sandpiper section. And right away, again, we have the link to the species bio, which we'll talk about more in a later section. We have the bar chart, which you can see Western sandpipers, obviously most common in spring and fall. That's when they're migrating through. They're way up north in the summer and some winter, but not in very big numbers. And it's important to note that these bar charts are a representation of how many of the percentage of checklists have the species on it at that time of year. So while the last week of July, Western sandpiper and short-billed dowager look similar, that's not to say that they're equally common or you'll see the same amount. That just means that the same amount of checklists, more or less, have a Western sandpiper that have a short-billed dowager in the last week of July in Yolo County. So while you may have 300 Western sandpipers and one short-billed dowager on an average checklist, they still show up the same on the bar chart. We can also see the top photo and the top recording once again of Western sandpiper. And in the bottom corner here, there's a little blue symbol of a camera and the number 165, which means that there are 165 photos of Western sandpiper that have been submitted to Ebird in Yolo County. And that can be, obviously, short-billed dowager is a lot less. There's only 23, but long-billed dowager have 293. So it's kind of cool to see how many photos. And if we click on it, it's blue. It takes us here. And we can see all 165, at least at the time of the presentation, photos of Western sandpipers in Yolo County. And right away, it's curated. So you can see the highest, best quality photos. So if we click on this first one here, look at this stunning shot by Matt Davis in July 2017 at the Yolo bypass. Beautiful adult, just a really stunning photograph. And yeah, just a beautiful shot. And you can access all of these photos and recordings in the same way. So if we were to go back, and let's say we wanted to talk about bell sparrow, once we're back at the illustrated checklist at the top, we type in bell sparrow and we do the same thing. We have the name, we have the bar chart. Bell sparrows are year-round residents in the chaparral in primarily the northwestern part of Yolo County. And you can see there's some gaps. That's probably just an exception. Maybe people didn't hike to the right elevation in the third week of December, but pretty accurate. And you can see that they're more common in the spring. That's probably reflective of the fact that they sing in the spring and are thus more easy to detect. We can see when they were last reported, the top photo and the top recording, as well as a link to listen to submitted audio recordings of bell sparrow. So if we click on that, we can see that there are 5 bell sparrows in Yolo County that have been audio recorded. And if we click on the first one, we have a nice recording from Jim Holmes from April 26, 2019 on Ray House Road, County Road 40 in the northwestern part of Yolo County. And I'm going to leave this presentation one more time so we can listen to this, hopefully, live. So let's see, click on this. And just like that, we're at the Cornell Labs Macaulay Library. And I'm going to go ahead and play this recording of a bell sparrow song, and hopefully you all can hear it. Could you hear that, Emmett?
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, I'll play it one more time just so we can listen to it again. But anyway, I love bell sparrow songs. They're super, super pretty. So you can view any photo, any audio recording based on by species and location through the illustrated checklist. And that's just a really efficient way to find high quality photographs and audio recordings if you're trying to learn more about a species that maybe you're not familiar with, or just to appreciate them. Like, I mean, it's a beautiful bell sparrow song. Heading over to the next section, I'll hand it off to Emmett. I talked a little bit about bar charts and what those look like, but if you actually go to the Yolo bar chart tab, we can actually explore them in a lot more detail. So I'll let Emmett take this one.
Perfect. Thank you, Zane. So we're going to start off, this time we're going to start off back on the Explore Regions page. And then on the bottom left, you're going to see this bar chart thing. So there's actually a few different ways to get to bar charts. I really prefer it this way. It's a lot easier doing it through the Explore Region page. So that's kind of how I'm going to show you guys to access this. So you're going to click on that blue lettering, and it's going to bring you here. And all 371 species are on this, and you can scroll through them. But for our purposes, we're going to stick right here. And this is really going to give you a better idea of when certain birds are present and when they're not. And it also gives you a really good insight into migration and how these birds move through our area. And in the next one, if you click on this little graph icon, it's going to present you with a really wonderful graphic that will show showing how snow geese are present. And so in the previous bar chart, when Zane was explaining about short-billed dowitchers versus western sandpipers and how they look similar on that bar chart, this is really going to give you an idea of how abundant a bird is at a different time of year. I really enjoy this. It's great. You can kind of follow and see how snow geese kind of explode in the fall around the beginning of October, and there's a huge influx of them in through December. They slowly taper off. There's a migrant pulse in early March, and then by about the middle to the end of April, all the snow geese are gone. And the ones that are here are typically birds that have a broken wing or who are kind of stuck here instead of being able to move further north. So Zane's going to talk a little bit more about hotspot maps and how to explore areas.
All right, so Ebird has, as we talked about before, hotspots and personal locations when it comes to submitting a checklist. And hotspots, as Emmett mentioned before, are locations that are shared by all eBirders, and they represent locations with a lot of checklists. They might be like a wildlife area or a frequently birded trail, or it might be something like a stakeout for a rare bird that a bunch of people went to see. Basically, hotspots condense reports into one consistent area, which helps with data accuracy and making the data easier to search. So if we're back at the Yolo County page right here, and we got our typical bar of blue links, and under Explore, we can click to view the hotspot map. So if we do that, click here on the hotspot map, it takes us to this page. And here we got another map, but unlike the species map, which starts off blank, this one has hotspots from all around the world, and they are ranked by the amount of species that have been observed there. So not surprisingly, Central America, South America, very dark red because most of their hotspots have way more species than the United States could ever hope to have. But other places maybe don't have as many species or not as many birders. But up at the top, we can search any hotspot in the world. So for example, a lot of you are familiar with Poudre Creek at Pedrick Road. Yeah, we can search by any hotspot by name. And let's say we wanted to search Poudre Creek at Frederick Road. We put in Poudre Creek. Obviously, there's a lot of hotspots. They line the creek. People bird at Poudre Creek all the time. We put in Pedrick, and we want to click Poudre Creek, Pedrick Road, Yolo County. Most of you guys are familiar with this place. If we click on that, it takes us to a map that has the pin. Here's Pedrick right here. Here's Poudre Creek. And a little window comes up, and we can explore a lot about this hotspot. So for starters, let's look at bar charts real quick. Just like Emmett was talking about, this time, instead of viewing bar charts for Yolo County, we're going to look at bar charts specifically for this hotspot, this single place, this one birding location. We're going to look at the bird distribution across a year for this location. So if I click on blue, bar charts, and if we had scrolled down, the species are sorted taxonomically. So we can find the warblers, which I find to be the most striking in this regard, because you can see exactly when they're here. And in the spring, warblers, neotropical migrants are coming through. And in the fall, they're here again, but they're gone in winter. They're in Central America or wherever they're wintering, South America. And in summer, they're on their breeding grounds. They aren't passing through. So I think yellow warbler is a great example. They start showing up in mid-April, so a couple more weeks we can start seeing them. And they peak in May. And then by June, they're gone. They're up, they're breeding. They aren't coming through Poudre Creek anymore. But then in late July, August, and definitely in late August and September, they're back. And this is when a lot of people will go to Poudre Creek to see yellow warblers, black-throated gray warblers, hermit warblers, Nashville, all these species. And by contrast, yellow-rumped warbler is a well-known wintering warbler. And so they're not here in the summer or really in much of the fall or spring. They start showing up on the early ends of both of these and then are basically omnipresent for the whole entire winter. And here we are in March. They are very much still with us. But in a few more weeks, we'll have to say goodbye to the yellow-rumped warblers for the summer.
Hey, Zane, do you mind if I point something out real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So under some of the rare species, like we see Blackburnian warbler and Parula, and there are these little blips. This does not mean that in the last week of September, northern Parulas come through. This just is showing that there was a bird present at the end of September, one of these years, and it's thicker because a number of people went out and chased it. So it's a little bit artificially inflated. So you want to kind of keep that in mind when you're using these and you're looking at how birds are coming through in spring and fall migration.
Yeah, and that being said, you can also note species like Blackpool Warbler, obviously an East Coast species that's really rare in Yolo County, but all the records are concentrated in September. So you can see that, like, by contrast, northern Parula has a spring record and a fall record. So you can look at individual rare records on these bar charts as well. Sometimes people ask me, hey, I really want to see a Nashville Warbler. It's kind of an elusive species sometimes. They're very pretty, one of my favorites. Well, you can go on the bar charts and see exactly when you can see a Nashville Warbler. And you can see that they migrate a little later in the spring. Mid-April is actually their peak. They kind of just show up and are there. And if you go out and you bird a place enough, you're likely to see one. They're a lot more common in the fall, but they're not really here for much of May, unlike a lot of the other warblers on this section right here. So this is a really good way to find out what time of year is best to see a species that maybe you're pursuing, or maybe you just want to know, when am I going to see the most diversity at Poudre Creek? Well, late August, early September seems to be your best bet. And you can do this for any hotspot, region, or even personal location in Ebird. And if we're back at the pop-up window for the hotspot on the Hotspot Map, back where we were, we can see that if you click directions right here, it takes us to Google Maps. And all we have to do is click directions. And this will take you, if you have the Google Maps app downloaded, it'll open it up, form a new window on your phone, or I guess your computer, or whatever you're using, and it'll give you directions from wherever you are in the world. So if you're just out and about and you're like, hey, I've never gone to Poudre Creek, Pedrick Road before, I don't really know where it is, you can search it, find it on the Hotspot map, click directions, and click right here, and it'll pull it up on your phone, and pretty soon you're GPSing it. Also from this window, both the view details button and the actual blue title, Poudre Creek Frederick Road, are the same. If you click on either of these, it will take you to what should look kind of familiar, a Explorer portal for Poudre Creek Frederick Road. And right away, we can see that Poudre Creek Frederick has 209 species reported at this hotspot across 2,503 submitted complete checklists. This is a lot. This is one of Yolo County's premier birding locations. And it's pretty cool that you can see that. But perhaps even cooler, in my opinion, is the fact that you can sort this data by month and year. So let's say we wanted to look at the month of March, which we're in right now. We can go up here to the top and click this drop-down menu where we can select a month. And for our sake, let's just put it for all years. So then we click set, and right here. And then just like that, we filtered it all. And now everything we see on here was in the month of March at Poudre Creek Frederick Road, Yolo County. And so you can see that there's been 105 species reported in the month of March, which is about half of the 209 throughout the entire year. However, there's only 126 submitted complete checklists, which is a very, very small fraction of the 2,500 plus that have been supported year round. That's pretty much because most birders go to this place in the spring and fall to view migrating birds. But you can still see this information and sort it the same way you would an entire year. Over on the right is the top media. So in this case, it's all photos that have been submitted to this hotspot in the month of March throughout all years. So the Swainson's hawk and wood ducks right here are the two highest rated photos from this hotspot in March. And speaking of media and searching it and ratings and all that, Emmett's gonna walk us through how to search photos and sounds and how you can utilize that to better recognize a species that maybe you're not super familiar with, or just to appreciate the incredible catalog of media that Ebird has to offer.
Perfect, thanks, Zane. Searching photos and sound is really awesome because instead of being limited in the Explore Regions area where you can look at photos uploaded to just Yolo County, this is going to allow us to look at photos of a species posted from anywhere in the world. So we're going to start off on the Ebird homepage as always, and we're going to walk you guys through how to get there. First thing, you're going to want to hit Explore in the top left right there. You're going to click on the blue lettering, and it's going to bring you to the Explore homepage, which we've seen a number of times today. And then right below Species Map, under More Ways to Explore, we see Search Photos and Sounds. So we're going to click on the blue lettering right there, and it's going to bring us to this. And so what we're seeing right here is we're seeing over 35 million photos and just the most recently uploaded ones. And that is an overwhelming amount of information, and we're going to narrow this down. So we're going to search a species. I've chosen Barrow's goldeneye because I really think they're just gorgeous ducks. You're going to click that. It's going to give you some suggestions, and you're going to click on that. And that is going to bring you to this page. And these are just photos of Barrow's goldeneyes that have been the most recently uploaded. I personally like to filter that by going over to the right here, clicking on recently uploaded. This drop-down menu is going to show up, and then you can filter for best quality. So you're going to click on that, and then boom, now you're looking at some of the best photos submitted of Barrow's goldeneye. Just really beautiful, stunning birds. And you can also filter even more concisely. You can filter by location if you wish to, whether it be state or county or entire country. Date can be important if you really want to look at a certain molt, and birds are typically molting during certain times of years. You can look through contributor. Some people take really lovely photos. And then there's a number of other filters in here that you can look at that we're not going to cover, but you can specifically search for birds in flight or males or females or young. And then I also want to point out on the left right here, this is how you can search through audio. And so if we were to click on this, it would show us all 36 audio recordings of Barrow's goldeneye. So next we're going to talk a little bit about exploring species. And this is most similar to your field guide. This is Ebird's version of a species page. And you can look at a number of different things about that species. And I'm going to let Zane take care of this one.
Yeah, so this one's basically Ebird's version of what you might see in a field guide. It's got maps, photos, and information, and let's check it out. So once again, starting the Ebird homepage, click our favorite Explore, all the good stuff is on Explore. Click that, and then right here, we're gonna put any species we wanna search. I decided to do hooded oriole. I think they're really beautiful orioles. So we type in hooded oriole, click on it to search it right here, and it takes you to the hooded oriole homepage, the species page. And right away, this beautiful male hooded oriole pops up, gorgeous photo. And you can also search or select from the right side over here. It might be different if it's on a phone, it might be below it or scrolling through. Anyway, you can view photos of different ages and sexes. Which can be really helpful in the same way that you might look at a field guide and see, oh, obviously male hooded orioles are bright orange, that black hood and throat, but females aren't like that. Generally, they're a lot more yellow-green, and immature males are a lot paler, but they still got that black hood. So you can check that out in the same way you would a field guide. If you scroll down just a bit, maybe 2 scrolls of your mouse, you'll come down to this section, and you can check out your personal statistics, which is pretty awesome of any species. So Emmett, Emmett took the screenshot. You can see that he has 105 checklists, which had hooded orioles reported on them. So he actually may have seen many more individuals than that, but 105 different times that he's been birding, he's seen hooded orioles, which is pretty awesome. Emmett doesn't take as many photos or recordings, so he doesn't have any, but if you did, they would show up there. And we can look at Ebird statistics for hooded oriole, which is pretty impressive. There are 287,757 observations of hooded oriole in Ebird, and within that, 15,982 photos and 365 audio recordings. So tons and tons and tons of observations and media to look through and learn about any species in the world. And then on the right, this again probably looks like something you've seen in a field guide or app. This is the range map. You can see that hooded orioles are primarily a southwestern US and Mexican species. And if you wanted to look more closely, the way we did on species maps, you can click right here, and that will allow you to zoom in more carefully. But we're going to go ahead and scroll down another 2 scrolls or so, and we can see the top rated audio recordings and videos of hooded oriole in the world. And so that's really helpful for if you're trying to learn a species. Maybe you're going to go on a trip somewhere you haven't gone before. Maybe somebody from back east is coming to California and they're like, hey, I need to know what hooded orioles sound like in case I see one. Well, you can click right here where it says view all, and that takes you to hopefully a familiar page, all the hooded oriole recordings in Ebird. Apparently there are 456, and you can click on any of these and listen to them in the same way we did on the search photos and sounds section. And so that can be really helpful if you're trying to get more familiar with the species. Maybe it's a species you haven't seen yet and you're hoping to, or maybe you're just curious or doing a project. Maybe you're doing a presentation on Ebird and you need bell sparrow recordings. But this is a good way to access that from the species page. And then target species, we want to transition a little bit to how birders can utilize Ebird's features for their own, I guess, benefit of finding birds that maybe they haven't seen before, that they want to see, and how you can use Ebird's tools with your own observations to learn about unusual or new species. So I'm going to hand it off to Emmett.
Perfect. Thank you, Zane. Yeah, target species is really awesome because it allows you to compile or create a list of species that you haven't seen in a certain region. And that way you can know which ones you want to more specifically target in trying to see. Ways you can specifically target them, of course, would be using some of the features we've already shown, like species map. But let's start off once again on the Ebird homepage. We're going to click on Explore, click that blue lettering, and that's going to bring us to the Explore homepage. You're going to want to scroll down a little bit from this, and you're going to see target species under species you need. You're going to click on the blue lettering right there, bang. And here you have a couple of options. You can search for year round. So what species you need in, let's say, Yolo County in year round, or which ones are likely in March. So let's click on Yolo. We're going to hit show target species. And then it's going to give you this. So the number one species I need to see the most in Yolo County is a brown pelican, which is very rare. But also, as you can see down here, on the right is this little map thing down there where Zane's showing you. If you were to click on that, it would bring you to species map of brown pelican in Yolo County, which is a really wonderful feature. If we were to select March rather than year round, it would probably show species that occur in March, like a Townsend solitaire or something to that effect, or maybe a yellow-bellied sapsucker that has wintered. But it wouldn't show any Bell's vireos or any of the migrants that have never been present in Yolo County in March. So kind of in tandem with target species is alerts. And this is just basically a way of getting email alerts from Ebird that notify you when a rare bird or a species that you need in that county is reported. So Zane will take care of this one.
All right, so cool. Yeah, alerts are fun. They are a good way to be informed. And I'll talk more about what they show you in just a sec. But again, starting at the Ebird homepage, we'll go ahead and click Explore yet again, and come on over to scroll down again, as we did for target species. And right next to it, under species you need, is alerts. If we click on the blue writing, it takes us to this. So if you're new to Ebird, or if you're like me and you don't have 15 subscriptions, as Emmett does, you're not going to have a list nearly this long. It might look something more like this, or maybe you don't have any subscriptions yet. But this is subscriptions to rare bird alerts that Emmett has. But if you want to add a new one, if you're new or have not subscribed to Yolo alerts, for example, you can go down here where it says rare bird alerts and click Yolo County. And that takes you here. And this is the Yolo County Rare Bird Alert. And so this is a list of rare species that have been reported in a given region, in this case, Yolo County, in the last week. And so at the time that we put this together, there had been a mute swan, which is an exotic species that is rapidly expanding. And we'll probably see a lot more of these in the next few years, but they are still uncommon. There's one at the bypass. There's a flock of mountain plovers that have been wintering north of Knight's Landing for the last 3 winters, and some of them are still hanging around. And there's been a couple of glaucous gulls at the Yolo County landfill. They're always fun. But if you want to get an email when rare birds are seen in a given region, so for our purposes, Yolo County, you can click up here where it says subscribe to this alert. And if you click on that, you're subscribed. So this means that you'll get, by default, it'll be set to daily, which means you will get an email, I think it's every night, with a list of rare species that we're seeing in that region. So if you subscribed, you might get an email that has all this information: mute swan at the bypass, mountain plover at Highway 45, glaucous gull at the dump. Or you can change this right here where it says change. You can change it to hourly. That's what I have mine set to because I want to find out in a timely manner, but that might be overwhelming to some people. But this is a good way to find out about birds that maybe you want to see too. Maybe there's a rare bird that you've never seen before and you're like, shoot, I want to go see that, but I wouldn't know about it if I didn't get an email. So you're subscribed and you won't miss it. And if it becomes too much, or you just decide that you no longer want to subscribe, you just click in the gray right here, unsubscribe. And Ebird is really good about just like instantly ending those emails. You don't have to worry about still getting weird emails like in some subscriptions. Ebird will just, that's it. And if you ever want to resubscribe, you can. And then finally, I'm gonna leave it to Emmett to talk about a newer feature of Ebird called trip reports. And personally, I think this is really cool. I think this was added maybe 6 months ago, maybe less even, I'm not sure. But it's a pretty new feature of Ebird, and it allows you to do some really cool stuff with your own observations. So I'm gonna let Emmett take you through that.
Okay, perfect. So trip reports are really cool. If you go on a trip, let's say you go to Costa Rica for 6 or 7 days, you can create a trip report and it compiles all the species that you saw during that given time that you've selected. And it's going to tell you a number of different things that we're going to go over in the next couple of slides. So to get there, we're going to start off on the Ebird homepage as always. And this time though, we're going to select My Ebird. And this is going to be something that we haven't seen yet, but it's going to look a little bit like this. And you're going to see some of your statistics, some of this ebirding over time, which you should definitely play around with and check out. But in the sake of time, we're going to focus on trip reports, which is going to be on the bar on the left down here. You're going to select that, and it's going to bring you to this page. And so I already have a handful that have been created, but we will create one together by clicking the Create Trip Report button in the top right. And this is going to bring us to this. And so I named my trip report. I named it 2022 March Desert Blitz. And what you're going to do is you're going to go down below that to the start dates. I selected March 6th of 2022, and then I dragged it over to the right for a 2-day trip. If you're only doing 1 day, you can definitely just select 1 day. Okay, so we've got the 6th and the 7th set up. We're going to now create a trip report by clicking on this green button. And then it's going to present you with this, which is who can see this trip report. Public means that anyone can view it if they come across it. Link only means that anyone who is a part of the trip report or who has the link set to them can view it. Or limited means only the people that are in the trip report can view this. So that really just comes down to how comfortable you are with certain levels of privacy. But let's click this Create Trip Report down in the very bottom again. And it's going to bring us here. Now we're going to look it over. And then this is important because if, let's say, you're with a group of people and you decide to sleep in one morning and you missed a checklist or something like that, you can select here and it'll opt you out and it won't be counted on your trip report. But let's go to Save and View Trip Report down here. And then that's going to present you with this. And this is really cool because you can see the location of where you submitted your checklist from. And it also shows you the number of species that you had. So we had 126 species in a 2-day period. And then it tells you how many checklists we submitted over those 2 days, which was 22. And then it also tells you how many of each species you saw. So this means that if you saw 5 golden crowned sparrows on one checklist and 10 on another, it's going to compile that together for a cumulative total of 15. And then it also tells you which birds were lifers, which I think is really cool. So I got 2 on this trip, a Sprague's pipit, which I was just over the moon about, and a dusky cap flycatcher. And then in the next slide, we can kind of see that zoomed in a little bit more. This is us scrolling down on the same list. There's the Sprague's pipit. And you can also see, so you can see for Northern Mockingbird, we had Mockingbird on 2 different checklists. And for House Sparrow, we had them on 4, and then it totals them up over there on the left. And I think this is just really cool and fun and a great way to summarize a trip and all the birds that you saw on it. You can also add a narrative, which is any commentary you would like to. You obviously don't have to do this, but it's a good way of almost keeping like a journal about your trip. And you can share this with other people, and they can kind of get a sense and a little bit of the story of the trip as well as the checklists. And then lastly, for this, we're gonna figure out how we can share a trip report. So you're gonna click edit, and it's gonna present you with 2 different ways to add people. One in this drop-down menu, and then one in the top right, that blue button that says add people. You can click either one, and it's gonna bring you to a page that looks like this. And then from here, I can enter the username or the associated email of the other people in my trip. So then that way they can be a part of it, they can edit it, they can view it, and we all have access to it together. So for this, I don't think we ended up showing my buddies' Ebird usernames, but I added them all, and then I selected done down here, and then boom, everyone's got it. So Zane is going to wrap up this presentation with some of the features on the Ebird homepage, some of the really kind of cool ones that I think a lot of people would appreciate.
All right, so we're going to finish back where we started on the Ebird homepage. And first off, I want to point out that the photo has changed, right? It's no longer a prothonotary warbler. It's a Satan bowerbird, which I've never heard of before I put this together. But the cool thing is that Ebird constantly rotates some of the top photos that it gets. And so it's worth logging into the homepage just to check it out. Maybe you'll learn a new species from some far off country that you've never heard of. So it's a really cool way to just kind of, check it out, learn something. I certainly enjoy it. But if you scroll down a bit right here, this is probably 2-3 scrolls of your mouse. You can look at some of the articles on the Ebird homepage. It's full of news articles and research papers. So right away, you can see that you can read about how Ebird is advancing science and conservation and how your sightings are connected to that. Sometimes they'll even put in your personal statistics of how that they connected to that paper, if maybe your checklists were used in it. Sometimes they'll have challenges where they'll try to get you to submit a certain amount of checklists in a month. Those are kind of fun. I think if you complete it, you get entered in a drawing for free binoculars. Global Big Day is fun. That's a project that they do every single year in May, where they try to get as many eBirders as possible to submit sightings in one day. So this year is May 14th. So if you want to, it can be anything as short as simply just looking out your window and listing the birds that you see at your bird feeder in a checklist. So that's May 14th. Keep an eye out for that. Might get posted on the Yolo Audubon Facebook page, but it's definitely fun to contribute and see what people post all over the world. And then finally, there is an Ebird mobile app. Here's a little picture of what the homepage looks like. It's available for iOS and Android. I think Emmett's going to put in chat a link to how you download it, but it's just through the App Store. You search Ebird, and it's primarily used for submitting checklists. It's, at least once you get the hang of it, a lot more efficient than submitting a checklist through the website. A lot fewer steps, and it's a lot easier to save locations and stuff like that. So I personally think it's really worth having the app. And that's what we're going to focus on at our field trip this weekend, which I'll talk more about in a second. It's important to remember to save your password and username. That way you can log into the app once you download it. That way all your information is connected in both the website and the app. But once you sign in, you're all set. Your sightings, your totals, the species, all that stuff will be connected, and you can view it on your phone, on the app, or on the website. And then speaking of the app, as we mentioned, Emmett and I are also going to be leading a field trip this Saturday called Ebirding the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. And it's Saturday, March 19th. We're going to be meeting at the Park and Ride in East Davis. The address is right here. And we're going to be meeting at 7, and the trip will be over by noon. I think Emmett will also, or I think you already put in a link to the Yolo Audubon trip posting, which has a lot more information about it, but we're excited. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to helping people that have questions with the Ebird app. I think it's a great tool, and the birding should be good. It's been really nice out there. I was out at the bypass last week and had a bunch of ducks. Shorebirds are arriving. There's a lot of raptors still, sparrows. It's a great place to be right now, and I'm looking forward to it. There's more details about this in the trip posting in the chat, but we do ask that everybody registers if they're going to go on this trip. I believe you can do that on the trip posting. And then we also would like you to have an Ebird account set up, as well as the app downloaded, just so everybody can be on a level playing field when we meet. And so if everybody can have the app downloaded prior to attending, that would be great.
Zane,
Yeah.
As far as the app goes, they should also have make sure they have the California pack for the app, so that Ebird knows what birds do.
Yeah, I think we can help them with that at the trip.
As long as they have cell phone service,
yeah,
we'll be
that
fine.
should be okay.
As long as they aren't strictly using their phone, using Wi-Fi, we'll be able to set them up with a pack and all of that.
So yeah, we'll help them through that. And that's about it. Thank you guys for letting us talk to you tonight and talk about Ebird. And at this point, we would like to open up this to any questions. It looks like there's quite a bit in the chat that we'll take a look at.
All right.
If you ever have questions in the future, Emmett and I are happy to try to answer them. We put our emails on this slide, and you're welcome to contact us or reach out, and we'll do our best to help you out. So that's about it.
I wanted to add a thank you to the Yolo Audubon Society, Anne and Ken. Really appreciate you guys having us. And if you have any tips for us, or if you want to email us and give us any feedback on what could make this presentation better for the future, we would really appreciate that, because we always want to do a better job and reach people in different ways.
You bet. I thank you both, Zane and Emmett, for a well-prepared and, I believe, excellently presented team presentation. It was seamless. So there's a question, one of the early questions in the chat, and I think might have answered it with the discussion on bar charts, but Stephanie had asked if the rarities that are rarity sensitive to the time of year you are making your observation.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, Emmett and I, along with a couple other Yolo County birders, are on the review team. So we're the ones that actually set these filters that Emmett was referencing. So based on historic records and abundance, and actually Ebird data now is a really good method to get an idea. We set the filters for what gets like flagged as a rare sighting or a high count. So we have it set up to determine what is unusual for any species based on the time of year. So maybe you have a golden crowned sparrow, like I think Emmett mentioned, in the winter is obviously really likely, but in the summer, they absolutely should not be here. So definitely would require details.
It's also important to think about even really rare birds, like let's say a cerulean warbler. If you were to report that in late September, that's a rare bird and would require documentation, but it's so much more likely and possible than, let's say, in the middle of December when there's no North American records and they're all in South America. So even with rare birds, time of year has a really big impact on them.
Yeah, and also on high counts, I think. I was flagged for high counts of 13 osprey in the air. And it was like late spring, summer. But I had my camera and I had a picture, and you can at least see 10 osprey in the photo. So yeah, high counts are also not time of year type of thing, I think.
Hey, Ken and Anne, I see a question from Katie in the chat here about the registration link.
There is no registration link. I just checked too. So I think you're just going to have to see who shows up. I mean, everyone who's here tonight could respond to one of your emails, but
okay,
that
so
was
No, that's okay. I think,
yeah, we'll have a sign-in sheet, and we'd love to see everyone there.
yeah, I think that may have gotten changed kind of last minute with John Watts, but that's all good. Well,
Okay.
happy to see anyone who shows up.
great.
There were a couple of questions about the app screen not looking on the screen on the app not looking the same as the one on the website. And Emmett's going to talk about that. I think explain a little bit about what you see on the app versus the computer at the talk. I mean, at the field trip when you are exploring the app.
Yeah, the app
Yeah,
definitely has a different layout. It's a lot more centered on submitting checklists and data, and a lot less about exploring the tools that we kind of focused on tonight. But we're going to definitely focus on the Ebird app with the presentation. It's a lot easier to share that in person, we felt like.
Okay. Al had asked a question about people's preference for using the app versus submitting your sighting on the computer. Emmett answered it. So Emmett, in case everyone didn't see your response on chat, could you go through that again?
Yeah, sure. It's a personal preference whether or not you would like to use the Ebird app on your phone or using the web browser. Some people who don't want to be looking at their phone and typing things in when they're out birding, sometimes they like to do that at a later time. They want to come in and do it on a desktop. But I was listening to that LA Birder webinar, and they said that about 60 to 65% of all checklists are submitted on the mobile app now. And I think it is a lot easier for me. I generally will make checklists on my phone using the Ebird app, but there's not a wrong way to do it. And it really depends on your comfort level.
Yeah, for me, it depends on whether or not I can read my writing 2 hours later. So I use the app. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions after that. There are a lot of thank yous, and which I want to add mine again. There was a fantastic job. Okay, so there are no more questions. I think I got them all. If I didn't get your question, please speak up if I missed it here in the chat. But I really do appreciate you guys putting together this wonderful talk. There are some things that, you know, I hadn't known that I can use. And I think once people, this field trip's going to be really great for folks, because once they get and they using the app with you guys there to answer their questions real time, I think we'll get more people using Ebird here. So thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone for hanging in with us tonight, because it was a little bit longer than others, but I think it's so much information in terms of going step by step that I think it was a really, really beneficial presentation and talk. And thank you guys for doing it that way. It was a great setup. Great setup.
And just don't forget that it's all been recorded. I mean, I myself, when I found my mind wandering a little bit, I thought, well, I can go back and listen to that section in the recording and study up on it again, because I learned all sorts of things tonight. It was fabulous. Thank you guys so much.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Stephanie, did you have, you still have a question? Okay. All right, folks. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the evening.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
It was great.
Night.
Hey, Kristen. All right, guys. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you, Ken. Have a good night.